Alright, hey, what's up everyone? I wanted to take some time to re-update some guides here with maxed club bags. So you'll see, on my clubs here, Pyro. You'll have these by being level 33 or higher. You'll be able to play with these. I did show some tips and tricks to getting to that stage as fast as possible. And you can find those on my channel as well. But what I'm going to do here is try to update with kind of more or less my method for going about playing these holes. And you can see that I'm basically aiming at the hole with this drive, and we're just going to put it out in play here. So more than anything, just try to get this first tee shot out in play. Oftentimes you'll see that I'll put on a javelin ball, and if it seems like I can, this is the way that I'll go about doing it. You can see 155, 153 is what it's actually marking the 155 club at, with 151 to the hole. I don't think this is going to get there. So that's a little bit unfortunate. The only reason is because it's into the wind. I find the wind is at least, one per and a little bit extra. So if the wind's 2 in the face, I expect this to come up at least 3 yards short, maybe even 4. If I just let this run out. So I wouldn't imagine this would go more than 149 or 150, and I needed to go 151. So with that being said, I don't feel comfortable risking it. But, I do think it would probably get in there close enough for great shot points if I was, right on line with it. You can see that I'm trying to estimate, how much wind to play. I do think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of where I am pointed out right now, but I am going to club up here just to be on the safe side. And I'm going to assume, as I mentioned, 3 or 4 yards short, and you can see it's 162. So I'm thinking 159 or 158 for the actual club to max out. And I needed to go 151, so I need to take off 7 yards. So what I'll do to make sure that this at least gets to the hole is I'll try to play a percentage that is going to give me the best chance to go about getting this. Now, typically, I'll be working through this very fast, but you'll see that, I'm kind of being a little bit more careful with my explanation, so it makes sense. But typically I'm doing this rather fast on my own. You can see with where my alignment is, I need to take off about 7 yards. I'm thinking maybe 4%. So I'm thinking of going maybe right here, and this should be hopefully like a 96%. And other than that, I want to try to make sure that I don't pull this. You'll see that I just try to make sure that I'm very straight with my alignment. It looks like I did pull it, so you can see that it goes out to the right. But had I hit that straight, you can see my weight there was absolutely perfect. Good chance for it to go in. Also a good chance for the great shot points. But, I did pull that tee shot and also the second shot as well. And you can see as a result, I end up with a miss. But a lot of times, there's a good chance that I can get it at the very least. And you can actually see somebody did get it in this contest. So here is hole number 2. The easiest way to play this one is with a gold tee. So that's what I'm going to do here. You can see we have wind in the face. Now the way that I play this varies typically. But what I'm thinking is something along the lines of full grabber 3-wood. This is a very controlled shot. If I was to hit this straight out, it might be too much, but the curl that I'm going to put on it is probably going to reduce this down to about the 258 or 255 range. So the amount that I curl is going to take off distance. So I kind of want to predict how much to curl, and I'm going to do some subset of an A1 shot here. So you can see where my alignment is. The wind is helping it to get over there, so I'm not going to need a very large curl. Another thing that I can do is a B1 shot, and I can just pull straight back, and I could essentially go B1. If I was going to do a B1 shot, though, I'd probably want to come in and aim more at the trees there. So I'd want to point a little bit over here. I didn't mean to. I'd want to probably pull over here a little bit if I was going to try a B1 shot. I do think a B1 shot is probably a good way to do this one. However, you always want to kind of factor in distance when determining whether or not to hit a B1 shot or an A1 shot. A1 shot is going to take off more distance than a B1 shot is. So essentially, and it's also going to potentially curl harder as well. So the way that I go about kind of figuring this out is kind of distance based on how I want this to land. So with this shot, you know, as I mentioned, I think it might get there with the B1 shot, but I'm not sure that it is. So I'd rather, to keep a little bit of distance, hit kind of a baby cut as opposed to just going with B1, which I think is probably going to come up a little bit short. It's just a guess. It's kind of hard to tell, you know, with, you know, I haven't dialed everything in quite that much yet, but, you know, just guessing, I'm going to try to keep a little bit more distance on the ball. So I'm going to aim somewhere over here, and we're going to just try to do a baby cut on this. And I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of where I am right now, and maybe just a little bit more than that. Maybe right here. Now, and this is kind of a better safe than sorry. The wind is helping it out, so since the wind's helping it, I'm going just a little bit under what I typically would. You know, I might typically go a little bit more than this, but the reason that I'm kind of reducing the amount that I'm going here is because the wind is going to do a lot of the curling for me. So aside from that, I'm just going to try to match that arrow on both sides, and you can see it gets just behind the hole here. So with just a little bit more curl there, it would have, you know, potentially gone in, or at least I gave it a really good chance. Now, let's talk about if I did do a B1 there, which is basically just pulling back and then pulling as hard over to the left as possible. And I'll do that on a tee shot here coming up, so I can kind of really clearly talk about, you know, how I do that B1 shot. But this course doesn't really require too many of those, but what it does do is it would have took off more distance. So I would have probably came only into the center of the green there had I tried to go B1, or it might have came up, you know, 4 or 6 feet short, for instance. There's like only so much that you can get that around the tree with B1, and when you hit an A1, kind of like I just did, it's adding on more distance. So you can see I got just behind the hole doing that. Now, this is a really tough pin location here. It's kind of my least favorite one to go. What I'll typically do here is I'll try an Orbits ball. And in terms of wind, how I typically play it, let's say the wind's a 7. I almost am playing it kind of like 1 to 2. So I expect it to kind of be double the magnitude in my face. You know, instead of taking off 17 yards, I'm expecting to take off 14 yards. But when I put on this orbit ball, I need it to get behind the hole. And you'll also see that I'm going to use the orbit. Main reason for the orbit, I'm just going for the hole out here. I'm not trying to put, if I was just wanting to put this on the green, I would probably just use a grabber ball and just try to hit it close. And this yardage here is probably a little bit short to do that, so I'd need to use a tee. I am going to use the tee here because clubbing up is going to move me up to 232, and I don't necessarily want to add on 25 yards, so I am just going to create a little bit better angle here and try to decide whether or not to put on this high tee based on distance. So I need to make sure that I get behind the hole and not to the right of the hole. I also need to assume that the ball is going to land shorter than the actual distance. You know, it's at least going to land 10 yards shorter than the number indicated. So if I'm playing the wind here with a gold tee, I'm assuming that wind's going to make it land at least, 10 yards short, possibly 14 yards short. So that would push my 214 to about 200. Then I need to decide, is 11 yards enough? If that's the case, is 11 yards enough that between first hop and complete rollout? And I'm not sure that it is. So with that in mind, I think I may need to go high tee here because I'll need those extra 2 yards to really ensure that it gets behind there. And then other than that, I'm just going to try to play this wind effect. You can see that I need to land to the left of the hole here, which that's going to be the hardest part, or to the right of the hole, because it's going to kick to the left. There's not a lot of room on the right-hand side, so this shot has to be absolutely perfect. And you can see I'm really, really going for this. I'm not playing for birdie here. I'm trying to make this to potentially turn this round into a 15-16 under. So this is typically my thought process, especially on the first 2 holes or first 3 holes. I'm always going for those makes right off the bat. And if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. I just lose this contest. That's basically what it comes down to. So that's more or less, my thought process. So I'm really trying to get aggressive here with my aim over to the right-hand side. Other than that, I want to make sure that that needle is pushed straight down, which that looks pretty good. Otherwise, I do revisions until I can get it to make it look just like that each and every time. Now, I really need to be, pretty exacting with the way that I push this up. So I'll typically kind of just train myself a little. And there you can see it actually did go straight up. And you can see it did get behind the hole and fire back, but I played too much, just barely too much wind there. So, but you can see, my process there, very good chance to be able to get that hole out. I'm surprised they didn't give me the great shot points there. So another, I had 2 really good opportunities, and I had perfect weight there on a lot of my shots so far. So on this hole, technically I could do, I wanted to kind of discuss, now I typically don't do a B1 shot on this hole. However, since I was talking about it, I may do it here. I may do it here just so I can kind of, clarify exactly my method for going about a B1 core shot, because, I typically don't do a B1 shot on this course really at all. But what I'll essentially do is I know that the ball will never get back to like wherever I'm aimed. If I'm not using like a gold tee or there's not some downslope or something, it's never going to make, so if I'm pointing at these trees, it's never going to make it back to these trees, especially with the wind resisting at 7 miles per hour. That's going to make it come back even farther. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a bronze tee, and I'm going to kind of point in the trees here, and I'm just going to go for a B1 shot. Like I said, this is typically not the way that I drive this. I usually just go for a straight out drive. But I wanted to talk about the method. You can see when I do my B1s, I make sure that my pull angle is, and you can see the way that I'm pushing up, I'm just basically doing this until I get to the point where it's the absolute most that it'll actually hook. And as I mentioned, you can see it comes well out to the left, and there's no real threat of it being anywhere remotely close to the trees. And it's just going to take some practice, but that's more or less, that's how I make sure that I always get the exact amount of curl each and every time, is I try to be as flat as possible, because it's only going to let you fire at a certain angle. So once you get to that certain angle, it's a very uniform shot. So that's the reason that I do it that way. Now, let's talk about this shot, because this is a little bit of a difficult one. The way that a 6-wood comes in is a little bit different than a 4-wood, 5-wood, 3-wood comes in. And oftentimes I'll hit any of those, but I'm very consistent at getting this hole. And I want to show you kind of my method. Now, I am going to probably do this with a 6-wood. I'll typically need to, so let me talk about two different alignments here. Typically, I need to kind of aim at the hole with a 6-wood when I do, and I'm going to do a C3. The hardest curl I can do with a hook, I'm going to do with the C3. So typically with a 6-wood, I'll have to align that towards the hole, very close towards the hole. Any other club, I'm typically lined up like this. So let's say I was going, and I never do it with irons, but just for distance, just for a frame of reference here, in case I was a little bit farther back, this is how I would hit a 4-wood, 3-wood, 5-wood. It would be much more towards the right-hand side. This isn't even considering in wind though. So you can see with the wind, I'm going to actually need to aim a little bit more right on both of these. So if I said typically I'll aim here with a 6-wood, I'm going to need to still play this wind. So since I'm going to need to play this wind, I am going to come over from this spot, and my aim's going to look a lot more like this. And you can see with what, and typically, you know, 6-wood, I'm thinking maybe about 200 with the grabber. So I'm going to go relatively full here. You know, I have a little bit of wind in the face, so it's going to probably come off a couple yards. So you can see if my club's a 242, the most I can really carry this is about 200 typically. So it's almost reducing like 40 yards on this uphill shot. Keep in mind it is uphill, so that's part of the reason. But also I'm taking off distance because I'm going so extreme on the C. So what you're going to see, same thing, you know, with what I do with my B shot, I'm going to do with my C shot. I'm going to make sure that I'm as flat as possible. So you're going to see that the needle is pushed over as far to the right as possible. Same thing on my push through. So the very same way that I do that B1, I'm going to do very similarly with the C3. I'm going to make sure that my angle is as far over as possible. And you can see I was just a little bit light on the way that I played the wind. However, just got this baby putt. It wouldn't have got to the hole anyway. So even if I would have got just a little bit more aggressive, I would have came up just short. I had a hunch that it might come up a little bit short, but I didn't want to hit a percentage 6-wood or a percentage 5-wood, for example, because it's just a little bit more annoying to maybe have to hit. And it also brings in the possibility that I'm going to make a mistake or an error in my calculation. So I never want to, I typically try to, on those shots, I haven't really tried to dial in, you know, 97% on a 5-wood, like would be perfect here. Like I haven't got that crazy about the game yet, but you can see overall, you know, we can get the ball to any point on the left of this green that we want. Especially when the wind's helping like that. You know, I could have wound up to the left of the hole if I needed to. I just have to kind of change my alignment a little bit. But I feel fully comfortable in doing that. So I did want to just talk about that. Now, for this one, oh, wow. So we got a really tough one here. Typically with, you know, I try to play the wind on this one. So I do want to say that I don't go over to this left-hand side very often. But since I'm on the back tee box, this is the very farthest that you can ever be on this hole. It's kind of an isolated case. Since the wind's in the face, if I would have had tailwind, I'd move it over to the right because I prefer going over that side. It's a little bit safer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my high gold tee and go over to this side because I really need to ride the wind and get as much distance on this as possible. Next thing you're going to see is, you know, I'm going to go basic, you know, driver. You know, I got to make a decision here. Do I want to use a grabber or do I want to just, you know, play this hook? This is a pretty tough wind here. So, you know, I'm kind of torn between grabber and regular, just nothing ball. I don't want to really reduce the wind because, you know, I kind of want to ride the wind so I can hook it less. So I don't want to use a wind reduction ball. So I'm kind of in kind of torn situations here. I can go Maniacs, potentially, 3-wood, and it would come in super soft and land on the green. Now, that might be something that I would typically do, but with the pin in the back there, it makes me want to hit driver and try to send the ball back there. So I'm kind of like torn right now to maybe go standard ball so the ball runs out on the green. Similarly, I could maybe go Maniacs to let it land on the green and super soft. However, this is going to add a lot of distance, and I might go too far. And what I like to do is I like to do 100% shots, but I don't necessarily feel comfortable doing 100% here if I do this Maniacs. Now, clubbing down, you can see where 3-wood is. You know, this might actually get there. It's dangerously close to getting there. You can see I have to carry it 300, but I'm shooting way downhill. Shooting down 300 3-wood with a slight cut, you know, I think there's a chance that this gets there. It's very close. I don't know if it's worth risking. You know, it would probably be better with a percentage driver if I was doing this, maybe 97% driver. One of the good things about the driver, it's going to come in lower. You can see that there's kind of an overlaying high tree, super high up there in the air. That tree's way up there, and with a 3-wood, my arc's going to probably be up to that very high tree up there. Now I'm talking right where it says shot guide up there at the top. You can see there's kind of an overlaying tree. If I was to go driver, it'll stay under that. So that's kind of an advantage to using the driver, but I do feel that I'm going to need to play. Another thing about the driver, it cuts harder than a 3-wood does. So the amount that I have to actually cut this is less, which is nice. So factoring in that I need to play the wind, that may be enough. This may be enough there. It's tough to say. And another thing, I can come in a little bit as well. So if I'm going to go driver, if I'm going to go 3-wood, I'm going to aim more where I just did. If I'm going to go driver, I'm going to come in on this tree a little bit, because the ball is going to come in lower and it's going to be able to duck around, and it's going to really cut to the left right off the bat. So you're going to see that I'm going to come in here and I might be able to get away with only this much curl. So you can see with how little I'm doing. But again, like I mentioned, you know, we are going to just try to kind of come in a little bit, maybe 5%, because distance becomes a factor here. And here you can see it's right on the edge. So I just held on, but just a little more curl, and that would have, you know, really gave that hole a run for its money. So another thing, you know, when you're on the fringe or you're on the green, you know, there's no fear of going too much. So you'll see I'll just hit 100% here. And at worst, it runs to the back of the green. It's never going to run down over. So I really don't have to worry about hitting something too hard. So here you can see Durr here having a pretty good round here. You know, we can still give them a run here. There's a couple holes that we can make. So I look at this as something I can definitely make. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to kind of size this up. Clubbing down is always a good option. And now here you can see 169, 169, silver tee. I do think this is definitely getting there because I'm hitting the downslope. So the downslope is going to help it to run out just a little bit beyond. Now, when I'm playing the left slope, I need to land this to the right of the hole. So I'm going to overplay the wind and play some slope. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to guess how much that slope is going to affect. And we're just going to essentially try to, I hate when that happens. So I reset my, you know, I felt pretty good about where I was. Let's go. Now I tend to miss this on the left-hand side. So this is one hole where I kind of underbreak this. So I am trying to get fairly aggressive here. And, you know, this is one of those things, if you hit the slightest of pulls, you're going to, and if you hit the babyest slight of a pull, you're going in the bunker. Like, that's how aggressive I need to be with this shot. I need to be so aggressive that I risk throwing away this entire round. Because I can't control stopping this ball. But distance-wise, this is a very good way to make this, because it's going to I know it's going to roll out to 169, at least. And with the downslope, it's going to roll out past the hole. So this is a very good chance for a make here. So this is kind of my thought process. As I mentioned, I really can't pull this to the right even a foot. And it looks like I did. Ugh! So it just holds on, but it didn't quite roll out. So it did come up just a little bit short. But you can see how close I was to that. I almost landed in the bunker with that little pull that I did, because I did pull it out to the right. It was almost enough to cost me, but I'm surprised it didn't roll out there. I thought for sure with the downslope, and it might have just been more than anything kind of where I bounced, just kind of checking up. Maybe I hit the upslope and it didn't roll out to the number. Because typically what you'll see is whatever the green tells you, it doesn't lie very often. So what probably happened, or I might have even hit, here's another thing, I could have hit the fringe. So the fringe lands softer than the green does. Not sure why, but it's softer than the green. And you'll see that the ball will check up. So if I did hit the fringe there, that's probably why it came up short. So it pretty much took away, potential hole out just by me pulling that. Because there was a very good chance that I could have made that one. Now, let's talk about this. This is the hardest tee box. They gave us the second tee box, which is the farthest one down here. And typically I like to go for this island out here. Now, the good news about when you hit this in the volcano down there, the good news about this is they usually drop you on the island and you can get birdie either way. So it's typically worth going for this shot. Now, I do want to talk about this. Typically, I can get there with a tailwind. You can see it's slightly into the face. I don't think I can get there. I can try to force the ball out there a little bit. I'm just going to do it because there's no reason not to talk about this shot. So I am going to just try to do it. But I don't think, I don't think I can easily make it out here. I'll typically use a grabber and try to stop it out there on that fairway. Very tough to get dialed in. I fully expect this to go in the volcano. It's a very low percentage shot the way that I'm doing this. You have to get in between those trees as well, or else you will hit them. But foremost than anything, even if you do go in the volcano, you're probably still going to make birdies. So that's one of the main reasons that I just try dumb stuff. Is I'll still probably salvage and keep my round. So if I had great shot points, I could still win this challenge. So I need to make sure that I get it through. And I am trying to, use that grabber to keep it up here and hopefully get it up to the fairway. Now, it looks like I pulled the shot off. Now, what it's going to require is, I'm going to have to go all-terrain. I don't know if driver has enough. So you can see how the fairway up there is on higher ground than I am. So I think, so first off, you'll see I'm in the rough. I'm going to put the all-terrain ball on to keep my full distance. I'll get my full distance back. It'll reloft my club. Now, if I would have had a little bit more wind, I would have been happier that this was going to get there. I still think it might get there, to be honest with you. I'm actually a little bit worried that I might hit the green and it rolls far past if I'm not too careful here. So you'll see that it does launch down. I might even go, 98, 99% just to be sure. I'd rather kind of, I don't want to hit the green. If this hits the green, it's probably going to roll through because I have nothing stopping it. I usually use a grabber once it hits the green. So I need to make sure that I don't hit the green here. And so what you'll see that I do is in this situation, I am going to maybe take off a percentage or two because as I mentioned, I really need to make sure that I don't hit the green. It's kind of like a death sentence if I do. And there you can see it just rolls up onto the green. It looks like 100% might have actually been perfect. It might have landed right, but it was so close that I didn't want to risk it. Like I knew that it was going to be close, and I'd rather just kind of get it onto the green as opposed to, you know, kind of beating that down there. Now, what I'll typically do on putts like this that kind of have just a little bit of break and they're kind of close is I'll kind of just play I'll play the weight of the putt. Otherwise, you know, alternatively, you know, a lot of times maybe I'll just smash it through the break kind of like this and play the edge and just go 100%. Now, what I'll typically do is I'll typically play this break on this because if I bring this in with good speed, it has the tendency that a baby pull won't cost you, you know, to where you can still make the putt. So that's one of the main reasons that I'll typically do that. But if I don't pull it, it wouldn't matter either way, whether I play it like this. And you'll see this doesn't go racing by the hole or anything. It's going to still come in with good weight. So you can see it, you know, it might roll 10, 15 feet past, but it's an easy putt every time. With you coming back, it would be an easy putt. So now you can see I tied this Durr guy. You know, he has a pretty solid round going here. Now 267, what I typically do is I like to use gold tee on this just to, you know, I do this no matter what, just to create the angle. I really like having a nice angle here, so I don't have to do anything crazy with my hook. Now, I don't really like bringing in a wood under this tree. A driver is actually going to go underneath these branches. If I hit a 3-wood, I need to curl it around. So because I can hit a straight shot, I like to go driver here. And, you know, in terms of where this pin is, this is very tough. You know, the ball's going to land probably 275, 280, maybe even 285 with the wind. I need it to land 268, so I got to play a percentage shot. So how much percent? That's the big question. And I also need to make sure, if anything, that I hit a baby cut. So you're going to see that I'm kind of just tilting the arrow to the left to make sure that I don't hit this tree. And we're going to just try, we'll try for 94, 95%. You know, I have no room behind me. I have no room behind for error. And you can see that I'm using a sniper to essentially just stop it on the green. Ah, wow. I cannot believe it. I pulled that. So that was a big mistake right there. That's typically not a mistake that I make right there. What I'll typically do is I'll tend to do this intentionally. I'll try to pull up in this angle kind of intentionally. I'll make my pull, and for some reason, you know, I was just a little overconfident there that I wasn't going to pull it right, and then I pulled it right. So I obviously must have just slightly pulled up. It's essentially going to cost me the round. You know, there's no chance I'm going to beat that other guy unless I make this. Which technically, you know, we still have a chance here. So there's kind of two things I can do. I can try to reduce the wind to where it doesn't even play, and I can just, if I keep this on line with the hole, it'll go in. But this is kind of a risky approach. The other way that, you know, I could try to do this is, you know, I could try to play the wind, you know, a little bit more carefully and use an all-terrain ball. So that way I know that the ball doesn't land short. So I'll know exactly how the ball comes out if I use an all-terrain, because it's going to behave like the club normally does. When I'm in the rough, I can't guarantee that this ball is going to roll out the way that, you know, it shows. But we do have the downslope helping us. So the downslope is going to give us a chance to still make this. So if I was to play this, which I typically don't play from here, first off, I need to make sure that I pull this dead straight. So I got to make sure that, you know, and I think this is the tick mark, but I'm not 100% sure. That looks pretty good. So I think it said 108, 120 is my club plus downwind. I need to take off, you know, it is a little bit uphill. I need to take off at least 10% to be on the safe side. Thinking maybe even like 11%, somewhere in here. So I am staying fairly aggressive. I'm going for this hole out, which means that I don't want it to come up short, which means that there's a chance that it's going to roll long into the rough as well. Now, fortunately, it's not a very deep pin, so there is kind of a safety net. There's a huge hump behind the hole. So even if I do go in too long here, it's not going to, break my round too bad. I'll just be in the rough, and maybe I lose a stroke, but it's worth it to go for this eagle here, because it's the only way I'd win is if I get this eagle in one of the next 2 holes. And of course I pulled it, so it doesn't matter. But as I mentioned, I was really going for that because, I really had to. It's the only way that I was going to win and potentially make that eagle. And if I get that eagle, I can maybe shoot, 14, 15 under. And that's the only way I can do it is if I go for the hole out. So as you can see, a pull over to the edge, instead of landing here on the front of the green, I land in the sand, so it doesn't get the opportunity to run out. However, this is still makeable. So, I feel I'm just pushing everything right, though. There's something about, I don't know if it's just me being on camera and just like not being used to running through this, but for some reason I'm pulling everything right in this entire guide. And when I get really grooved in, you'll see, I can just really flick these up. This is also my first game today, but with that being said, we can still go for this, and that's more or less what I'll try to do, is I'll try to use a javelin out of the bunker here, because we really need this birdie if we want to even potentially go for an ace on the next hole to win this match. So what you're going to see is I'm going to play the slope plus the wind. So I'm playing both. So I'm playing plenty for the wind. It's mostly slope. This is going to really break to the right, and the wind's only going to go maybe, if you're looking at the width on my screen, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8, maybe an 1/8 of an inch for the wind, and the rest is going to be the slope. So you can see with where I'm aiming, 12 yards out of 33. So at 12 yards out of 33, you can see it's a little bit uphill, so we are going to play more than 30-some% because of the uphill. So I'm definitely thinking into the 40s somewhere in here. And I'm trying to stay fairly aggressive to where I'm landing kind of right in front of the hole, and then it just kind of breaks into it. Much better. Oh, so it stops right on the lip. So we almost, I just needed 1 more percent. 1 more percent. I might have just overbroke that just slightly. Just by the, width of just a millimeter there. But here you can see, we're going to be going for this full force. With the tailwind, 206, 201, this may get behind there. It's going to be questionable. I think it's behind there. Otherwise, I would go bronze tee, silver tee, gold tee if I had to. I think this is maybe just getting behind there. The only way I can make this is really with an Orbits ball, because it's going to back up super hard, potentially straight into the cup. So the only thing we're going to have to do, well, first off, we're going to need to underplay the wind intentionally, because we need it to land to the right of the hole so it takes the slope and comes back up to the left. So you'll see that I'm kind of underplaying the wind just slightly. I would typically maybe go a little bit more than this, but I need to make sure that I get this ball to the right enough. And I do think that this is going to just get behind there. I'm kind of in between on going bronze tee here or going full. And I'm just really not sure. So there's a chance that this is going to be a bit short. However, worst case scenario, we're just going to get a birdie. And it looks like I pulled it a little. Oh, the wind's not really taking it. So you can see it is behind there, and it comes back, into the 190s. There's a chance that if I played, it looks like I pulled it to the right, and then it had like a hook on it as well. So you can see the wind didn't even really touch that. But I ended up overplaying it there. So really cost myself a opportunity, but my weight looked good. So if I would have had the, the alignment there, good chance that I could have got that. But again, hopefully that kind of helps. You know, that guy Durr, I don't know who that is. He might be on, you know, the community, might not. But, you know, he played essentially a flawless round there, being able to just make sure that he made no mistakes. I made one mistake on 8, but you can see, you know, if, you know, especially if I didn't have those pulls to the right, it seems like I pulled almost every shot to the right in that entire match. So just something with, you know, just kind of the way that I'm pushing up today. You know, typically if I, you know, have a round like that where I'm doing that, you know, maybe I just take a break, or, you know, I just go straight into the next game and just work on it for next game and just try to, you know, again, this is, you know, only the first game. This is way slower than I typically play. So I'm going to put together more guides, but and I'm just going to put this up for now, just so you can see kind of my thought process. And if you want to dive into this as to all the way that I kind of work through these shots, that's just kind of how I'm doing stuff on the fly. And in the future ones, I'm going to try to push them through a lot faster. You know, I can usually play 6-7 minutes for a round of 9 holes. And that's one of the biggest things that I love about this game, is how fast that you can get through these. So, you know, be on the lookout for that. I am going to try to go through these holes again and just try to, you know, kind of update my content for all the courses, for all the sides, just so you can see kind of like how I play these with max bags. So hopefully, you know, that makes some sense to you. And sorry for, you know, kind of really slowing down here and going over this, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, you kind of understand the method that I'm kind of working through in my mind behind the scenes, you know, on each and every shot. So hopefully that helps you, and good luck, guys.